All right, how's everybody doing again?
Excellent.
Everybody's good? All right, appreciate the brother Zoser for allowing me to speak with you guys on today. I'm glad this is a more personal setting because we didn't really have to use the mic and everybody's facing this way, so that's cool. I was listening to a lot of good information today, so I want to thank everybody who came. I think the two speakers they had left that was here. Sister back there, what's your name again?
Michelle Davis.
Michelle Davis. Great. I'm going to take that home with me and just do my little exercise, you know what I'm saying, and just breathe fitness. I need to highlight you later on because, man, I'm trying to gain some weight. I'm trying to muscle it out, so that's cool. Numerology was good and economics was good. My name is, I go by the name of Divine Prospect, and I'm an educator, you know what I'm saying, and I do lectures and stuff like that, and all different types of grounds. I do a lot of not-for-profit lectures. Have an organization called Harbinger Ministries, so we do a lot of education as well as provide services to the black community so we can kind of resolve a lot of the social ills that we're experiencing so that we all can have leverage in society and be able to maintain a degree of sustainability and quality of life. You know what I'm saying? Because what good is giving a whole bunch of information if when you leave out of here, you're still facing the same social ills. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty much our paradigm of thought and what we go by. So today, you know, I had something I wanted to talk about. I'm going to talk about it anyway. I had a lot of good information. I was like, man, I could touch on politics and economics and so forth. And I said, you know what? Let me just touch a little bit on history and information to give a little balance to a lot of things that was being discussed on today. Now, I'm only going to be like maybe about 20 minutes. I'm not going to be too long. And pretty much didn't want to do too much because I wanted to give more of my time to my colleague who has a mini PowerPoint presentation who's on his way to present. So I didn't want to do nothing too heavy, you know, to detract away from what he's going to do. But I want to talk about unity because that's one thing that people know me for is unity. Now, in order for us to get on the same page in regard to unity, one thing that I always talk about is what is our common denominator as people. Because see, we always focus on the numerator, never focus on the common denominator. Numerator would be our political, whatever we subscribe to, would be our religious subscription. It'll be what we prefer to watch on TV or something like that. These are all numerators. But what is the common denominator that we all experience as melanated people here in America? We know what the common denominator is. I'll let y'all speak. Anybody can raise their hand. What's one common denominator that we all can agree that is necessary for us to survive, thrive, and exist here, wherever we are? We could be in America, we could be overseas. What is one of the common denominators? Yes, sir.
You dealing with this white man.
Okay.
I said, got things done.
Oh, man. All right, so as melanated people, he has a point, we have an oppressor, right?
Yes.
A lot of us in the black conscious community, we identify the oppressor as being the elitist, white supremacist. Some of us identify the oppressor as being our own selves.
Right.
Everybody has their own, I guess, dichotomy on how they divide on who the oppressor is, but at the end of the day, there is some pressure coming from somewhere that's affecting on us. If you know anything about physics, physics is how different bodies of atoms affect each other. You know what I'm saying? It can be coming in contact, there's polarities, mass, weight, etc. Somebody else give me another one. So I hear we have an oppressor, right? Melanated people, we have an oppressor. Can somebody name another common denominator that we can all agree?
We breathe.
Air. There you go. That's one. Another one?
Water.
Food.
Water.
Water, clothing.
Clothing.
Shelter.
Shelter. Anything else?
Relationships.
Relationships. Okay. So my thing is this, right? If these are the all things that we all have in common, how come this does not take the front stage in our conversations? Why is that? Why is it always the small petty things in our community that we exalt to divide each other?
Because I
Not
believe
responsibility.
Okay, that's great.
Distraction.
Liability, distraction.
right? Or we take the common denominators for granted. Air, like people don't. We breathe, but do we? You know, and the sister kind of let us feel like you gotta appreciate that air that can go. So
Exactly.
I think that common denominators we don't really we take for granted. Therefore, like you said, we mention all of the smaller, the other things that aren't so much important.
Exactly. Well, it's not that they're not important. It's just that it's a point of contention and division. And in order for us to have any leverage and sustainability in this society, we have to unite together. And it's like we don't come together to create these paradigms where we can say, you know what, I respect your disposition. But at the end of the day, since we all have children we're raising, since we all have to live in the same community, how can we create a system so that way we can co-opt together, we can live together and also respect each other? Now, one thing we have to, when you study a lot of history, you'll see that anytime we had any strong movement where the family unit was strong, anytime we had a strong movement where people were respecting each other. Now, I wasn't alive in the 60s, 50s, but I have my mother and other family members and friends of family who were. But they would tell me there were times where they can leave their door unlocked and walk out. There were times they can leave their car unlocked and nobody would touch it.
Right.
There's a degree of respect that was there in the community earlier on that we cannot do today.
Right.
Anytime there's a degree of unity, something happens, a schism happens, and now we're divided. And now we get to the point where we don't trust each other, and now we have an issue, right? So what I wanted to touch on today, and I don't want to get too in-depth with it, I just want to touch a little bit on the historical aspect, is how do we get into this state? Now, based on a person's disposition, you're going to have your own little historical story in regards to how we came into our particular state. Now, the brother touched on something, people laughed when he was talking about the white man, right? And I'm not here to bang on the white man, but what I want to do is I want to touch on history to show that all melanated people had an indigenous system that they were existing in a particular ecosystem before it was interrupted, right? Now, this is very, very important because if we don't understand this, we cannot get back to what allows us to have our common denominators. We have to be in a harmonious situation where we're respecting not just ourselves, but also the environment around us. And I'm going to touch on this. Now, how many people here is of the Kemetic persuasion? Raise your hand. Slowly. How many people here is of the Hebrew Israelite persuasion? Raise your hand. You just everywhere, right? How many of here is of the Islamic persuasion? Are you all three? Or how many here dibs and dabs and whatever works for them? Right? Okay, that's good. That's honest, right? Okay. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because if you look at each one of these indigenous systems, each one of these indigenous systems was at a period of harmony before things were interrupted. Okay? Now, if you look at history, I'm not gonna touch too much on indigenous people interfacing one another. But when we look at how everything changed, most of the change occurred when we had the Greeks come into indigenous places. And there's a reason for that, right? When you're in an environment where you have everything that you need for sustainability, you're able to respect that environment because you're not going to over-deplete it because you understand that you need it in order to survive. Right. Today we have GMOs. Anybody know what a GMO is?
Genetically modified
organisms, right? Genetically. Why would there be a need or a push for GMOs?
Because we have depleted the natural sources in certain areas.
Now, there you go. So if you know anything about colonists or somebody who deals in imperialism, their objective is to take the resources from the indigenous people at any means necessary, whether it's deception, whether by force, take the natural resources, hold it for yourself, because now that becomes a commodity that you allow them to fight over. A lot of the wars that are started in Africa, even in the Middle East, is over resources because one group has retained these resources for themselves. They found some way to come into the back door, take all these resources, and then they give you little bits and pieces and have you fight over it, right? Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we have a micro-schism of that in our community. Resources in our community we think are limited. This is how the gang mentality starts. This is my block, and everything else on my block is A, B, and C. If you cross my block, we're going to have a problem. Now, we're arguing over something that we don't own.
Right.
The gangs don't own that property. And if a construction company wants to come in and buy that property and knock it down, what are they going to do? They ain't going to do nothing. They're going to run away from it. So the problem is that they don't own the resource, but yet they're fighting over the resource that somebody else owns that at one point in time, before we came into our diaspora, we had. Right? Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So the question is, if you look at the melanated indigenous people, we're at a point in time where we're at harmony with nature. No matter what religious persuasion you have, if you do research on the people indigenous to that area prior to colonialism, you'll see that the people had respect for their environment. They never overpleated their environment. If you're in a Kemetic persuasion, that's called ma'at. You have to have order or balance. Can't have too much ishfet. You have to have more balance. Why? Because if you take too much of the land cannot produce. If you're a Hebrew Israelite, you know that every 7 years you have to let the land rest. Right? Every 7 years you have to let. Why? Because you cannot overconsume the resources, because you have to give a degree of respect to the land. The land is producing from you. The problem is that the infiltration that occurred turned us into consumers rather than producers. This was something we was talking about earlier. We touched on it in our small conversation here. So this is the reason why I'm bringing this up, is because in order for us to get to a point of unity, we have to see what transpired in history that caused us to change into who we are today, fighting over resources that we don't own. Right? Now, we have systems where every persuasion where you can create these resources for yourself. But unless you understand how you got in your condition, you cannot revert back to your original pristine state. Now, if you look at history, we know that a lot of things changed or shifted when we had the Greeks come on the scene and create what's called Hellenism, right? Now, creating Hellenism, what your objective is having an ecumenical system where you're trying to get everybody on one accord. The Greeks try to get everybody to speak their language, know their culture, etc. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that the Greeks actually stole these cultures from other indigenous people. If you're a Hebrew Israelite, you know they came into the Levant region with the Seleucid Empire, and they took all our resources, our books, and relocated us somewhere different in Alexandria. If you're from the Kemetic persuasion, you know that they came into Africa once the Persians opened up the door, and they went into all these schools, they took all the information, they created a library in Alexandria, where they took all the books from the priests that were there, and they hoarded it to themselves. And they made it, and they outlawed it if the priests decided they wanted to still teach and open up unless they paid tribute to Ptolemy. This is what the Ptolemy Empire has done. Why is this important? When you take away the knowledge of the people, their indigenous writings, their culture, their language, once you rob a people of this, they lose their history, they lose their identity. You understand what I'm saying? Now, when you sell them back something else, you have to fight over something that's not even them. And then now you create a paradigm where if you continually embed this into their mind, because look at this, when children go to school, black children when they go to school, what's the first thing they learn about themselves in history?
Slavery.
Slavery. Slavery.
Everything after that.
Now imagine psychologically, you're going into school as a young child, whether you're studying social studies, history, and you're being told as a black person that you started off as a slave. Do you know how that impacts the psyche of a small child? And then when we look in our community, we see how our kids are running rampant. Think about this. If you told that you start off as a slave, that means you have no history, you have no identity. Look at this. I had purchased National Geographic Almanac, right? It was telling you about world history. Don't you know when I read that book, there was little to no history in Africa? At all. Only thing they touched on was parts of Kemet or Egypt, and that was it. They left the whole continent of Africa out. But they told you everything about China, everything about the Native Americans over here, but you left the whole continent of Africa, not just that, parts of Arabia and the Levant region as well. Why are all these things left out, but yet everybody else's history is there? And when a black child comes into school, this is what they're learning. This is why when they grow up and they look in their community, they don't respect each other because you don't have no history. You're working to be somebody or get established just like I am. But if I look at everybody else's culture, and back in my mind, I learned in social studies that, wow, you know, the Indians, their history is so and so and so. Oh, the Europeans, their history. So you're able to have a subliminal respect for these other ethnicities and not your own, because it starts right in education. So now when you have people who come into indigenous lands and they're taking all of the information, for example, the Hebrew Israelites know that they took the scriptures and they converted it over to Greek, which when you get to Septuagint. You know that we had all the famous Greek philosophers went into all of the Egyptian temples and they learned from the initiated rites of the priests that were there. Then they took that information with them. Aristotle, all of them took that information with them, and then they concealed it for themselves. Now look at this. Anybody heard of the Alexandrian Library of fire burning? Most of those scrolls that they had there were the scrolls from the Egyptian priests that were burned. But their copies of it was not. Now there's a reason for that. They understood that, okay, you know what, in our environment where we live, it's an arid region where we live, there's not a lot of resources where we live, so our conduct is going to be, have a behavior system where it's like, okay, how can I survive? But if I'm in an environment that's always producing for me, I'm not going to be in the extrospective thinking, how am I going to survive? I'm going to say, how can I thrive internally? Because now I have all these resources, right? So now, as a colonialist or an imperialist, once you see that all the resources where you're at are all depleted, and you're in an environment that's not suitable for you to thrive in, then your mind mentality is going to be, how can I go into this land and take these resources for myself, and then trick the people? Now, you have to take time to do this, and the best way to do it is through education. So the more and more you take education away and put emphasis on your culture, because Greek culture became very, very prominent for a reason. Very, very prominent. Because after the Greeks came on the scene, they made a way for the Romans all the way up until the point that we hear today. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is this, right? There were 3 things that were done to us as melanated people, and once we identify these crimes, then we can find a way to go back to our pristine source so that we can respect each other socially, politically, and economically, and we can thrive as people. First thing was, the act of home invasion had taken place. Now imagine anybody here, you have a home, you have a house, and somebody from the outside is looking at your house, and it's, wow, it's a nice house, I want that house. And they set something up, a lot of movies are set up like this. They set something up, with it, I think the name of that movie was a Safe House, but not Safe House, the movie with, I forgot her name, where she had a safe room in her house, and the people broke into her house.
Yeah.
Was
Safe room?
Safe room, safe room, right?
Yes.
And they broke into her house, and she had to hide herself in this small corner of the house that was almost indestructible until help arrived. But imagine you having a home, and you have your family at home, everything's peaceful, everything's cool, and then you had these burglars just come in and just break into your home. You want to secure your family first as a man. You're thinking, okay, he's thinking about protecting his wife and his kids, the mother's thinking about protecting their kids, and if the kids are secure, how can I help my man? You know what I'm saying? A good woman's going to do that. How am I help my man in this situation? But the point I'm trying to make is that imagine if they came in and they set everything up so that you cannot leave the home. And the only way you can leave the home, is if you forget about who you are. Now, listen to this. They break into your home, they secure the home so you can't get out, no communication lines going on, you can't get no help, so you have to stay in the home. They securitize your home so well for years that now they do what's called identity theft. Now they start to say, okay, you know what, now that you're in my home, you can't go nowhere, but you know what, I can still use your identity so that I can benefit off of it. Right. So the next thing they do is take your identity. They take your cards, your credit cards, everything like that, and then they go in and act like they're you. They go to the bank, open up an account, they do all this type of stuff in your name. Right?
Right.
So now, let's say this takes place over the course of years and there's no way you can get out. Let's say for whatever reason, you decided to go off the grid and you don't interact with family and anything. They think you're okay because they don't really talk to you. So they took over your home, they took your identity, and the last thing they do after years of being in this state, let's say that you died off and generations are coming up, the next thing they do is that they elicit, they give you a counterfeit history. So for example, so after the time has passed, after they broke into the home, years ago, they took your identity. Now the kids that are growing up in a home from your lineage, they're giving them back a counterfeit history on how you got into your position.
Right.
So you're thinking, you don't know that this was originally your family's home.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
You're thinking, wow, I was born into this. Think about this for a second.
Right.
You're thinking you were born, so 2-3 generations come, and you're thinking, and now they're giving you a counterfeit history. They give you counterfeit goods, counterfeit clothes, because let's say your family, let's say they were growing food or whatever the case may be. They decided to buy you GMO foods and so you can give you back GMO foods. The point I'm trying to make is that 3 crimes were committed: home invasion, identity theft, and eliciting or trafficking of counterfeit goods or services. Now, why is this important? If anybody here is good with law, you good with law, right, my brother? Yep. So these are some things you probably hear on a day-to-day basis, right?
Wow.
But what I'm saying is what we experience on a small level has taken place on a grander scale, and a lot of us don't have the education to realize that these 3 crimes were committed. So the first thing we have to do is find out what our real history was. Because a lot of us don't study history as black people. You ask any black person down the street, you ask them, say, hey, prior to slavery, where was your family at? Where was your lineage at? A lot of people would say no. They're like, I don't know. Say, what you mean? Say, we was there. You know what I'm saying? What you talking about? You understand what I'm saying? The reason why that's important is because that goes to show that those who put us in that position did a great job. Because now we don't have a clue. And now what we're doing is that we're going after the things that are counterfeit instead of things that are substantial. Because we don't know that we're entitled to it by birthright. And this is something that was mentioned earlier. I think you touched on it in regards to birthright. So when you do history and you see what the invader has done, we have to look in our communities today to see how that same thing is going on. Property is being taken from us all the time. Foreclosure is happening more so in black communities than anywhere else. Name another community with another ethnic group that have more foreclosures than us. And once you name it, I'm gonna go visit it and I'm gonna do the math. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna find that. That's a huge problem. Second thing is identity theft. If you study identity theft, who are the main people to suffer from identity theft?
We are.
I wasn't even going to touch it, but yeah, we are. He jumped the gun, but that's good. We suffer more for identity theft than anybody else.
Georgia's number one.
Georgia's number one.
Yeah.
And the city of Atlanta has almost more African Americans than any other city in America. Per ratio. Not the amount, but per ratio. But yet we suffer free. Who sells the most counterfeit goods?
We do.
We do. So these 3 crimes that was committed to us, we're perpetrating today.
Right.
Do you see how that works? So listen, I'm gonna slow down. I don't know if y'all caught that.
Yeah.
The 3 crimes that was committed to us, we are now perpetrating today.
Every day.
So
And go ahead.
I was gonna say, with your example, as far as the house and different. So my thing is, if someone left every clue for us to get back to what you saying,
I was about to get to that.
and if we ignore that clue or we don't respect that person who set the tone to do everything you just said, put things back in order. My thing is, or going back to that perspective where you said some would say it's the white man, some would say it's us.
Yeah.
Me, I would say, well, I'm not gonna say what I'll say. I'll say with that example,
Yeah.
if we had someone in that house to say, yeah, this is our parents' house, and all the kids don't believe, like I'm telling you, like this is our house, this is our
I'm
house.
about to tell you something.
And then-
Now that's good that he said it, because I was about to jump into my next point when I said that. After I said that we're perpetrating the same crimes. So imagine still being in the same house. Let's say 3 generations passed in the same house. Let's say, for example, for some reason the attic was always off limits. Let's say, for example, one of these kids who parents used to own a home, is now like an indentured servant or slave in the home, decides to make their way into the attic one day. They just decide to break in there out of curiosity. No, they probably gonna get in trouble for it. And let's say they started to open up boxes and see pictures. Pictures
Right.
of their family happy and everything, smiling, and say, wow, this is my grandfather. Looks like he was happy, he's smiling, looks like he's in his home too. Then you're looking through all the pictures and you see all these different clues, and it's like, well, wait a second. This is our house. You know, you see him building the house and everything, you're like, wait a second, this is our house. And in your mind, now you have to wrestle
with your
cognitive
reality.
dissonance. It's like, okay, you know what, I was told this, but now I'm discovering something different. So what do I do? You understand what I'm
I got a
saying?
question.
Okay, sure.
How do we take that energy that we're finding out the truth and we do not convey it to the others as religion?
Exactly.
Because religion, if I was to kick, because me and you, like as far as the history and understanding things, like I definitely, because I'm a history buff, like my people
I
will
got
tell
you,
you.
bro.
My thing is, how do we take that truth and convey it to the people without them thinking it's religion? Because we've been raped by religion so much that if I bring more science to the people, they're going, oh, I'm not with that.
Yeah.
But it's everything that we need to reverse what we're doing. And
Now let me show you this, right? And I'm glad Miss Michelle Davis brought it up. It has to do with that person's desire. Some people don't have any aspirations beyond what it is they already have. Some people just don't have it. You know, some people have been downtrodden so much, they just have been so jacked into the matrix, they don't even care about coming out. So you can tell them today, you blue in the face, it won't matter. It's not for them. It's for the ones that really want to know. So let's say, for example, that same child comes down and they're trying to share this with their brothers. And they're like, oh no, you're lying, I don't believe you, that's not us, it's made up. Because look what they've been told. Look at the environment they grew up in. And you see that, okay, you have like 5 siblings, 4, it's like, oh, we don't care, but that one sibling's like, you know what, that does make sense. So you cannot stay there for the sake of just those 4 children, because that's exerting time, energy, and effort. You know what I'm saying? Because all they're gonna do is keep pulling from you and not giving any return.
Right.
That one that's gonna work with you is the one that you're gonna spend that time on. Now, the reason why I say this is because when you study indigenous cultures, you'll see the situation where, okay, let me see, I wish I could have played it for y'all, but I'll talk about it. There's 2 videos that when y'all get a chance, I want you to go back home, type it in YouTube and watch it, right? Oh, I'm sorry. You want to say something?
No, actually, I want to join in. Like you said, how do you convey that to them? I would say my solution is economics. The reason why I bring up economics is because, first of all, commerce is intercourse, and that's contracts. You get bills in the mail every day. You get forced contracts by the police every day. Also, our people are not, if you show them the money, you show them how to build their way out of the situation,
Right.
they're going to be more apt to listen to the rest of your suggestions.
And you're right.
So I feel like economics, being able to be producers and show them how they can build wealth and get themselves in a position like, well, okay, I was broke. Now I got some, now I'm eating. What else? You said I'm an Israelite, or you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You said I'm special.
Exactly.
Now it's more believable.
Now they could put
You
that
know,
suit on.
like if you got a garden, hey, look, we out here feeding the people.
Right.
We have food.
doing
We
that.
have clothes.
Uh-huh.
We're putting clothes on people's back. They start listening.
And that's great. Now, the reason why I say that is because now we have to be able to devise a way so that way we can enlighten those who are not. Now, he mentioned economics, and economics is like pristine for me. You know what I'm saying? Me and a brother, we talked before, so we're on the same page in regards to economics. I didn't want to get too heavy into economics, but I agree with that. The thing I want us to study is we need to look at indigenous culture prior to invasion. Because indigenous culture prior to invasion had a totally different system than we used to here in America. Now, how many people here have probably thought about it or heard about it that we should learn how to live off the grid? Because there may become a point in time where we may not have all the conveniences that we have today. The state is set up so that way we can be fully dependent on Big Brother. Every facet of your reality is designed to be dependent on Big Brother. From technology to food to everything. Entertainment, everything has been designed for us to be dependent upon Big Brother. Now imagine a society, let's say Atlanta for example. How many African Americans are here in Atlanta? And if somebody give me a rough estimate, if anybody knows.
2 million.
1.5.
In the city of Atlanta?
Yeah, city of Atlanta.
Or are you saying Metro Atlanta?
Huh? Just Atlanta. Just Atlanta. It could be Greater Atlanta, it could be Metro Atlanta. It don't
Oh,
matter.
like 700,000.
So imagine all of these people in Atlanta who are so independent of the state. Let's say that something happens one day, and let's say all electricity goes out. They can't watch Empire. Right? There's a riot, right? You can't watch Empire. Let's say, for example, the dollar tanks, and you can't go to the store and buy anything for your people. How many African Americans, now our people, how many of us you think will be able to survive in that type of environment?
No.
How many?
A very small.
Okay, you saying us in here. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the rest of Atlanta.
It's gonna be World War Z.
There you go.
Yeah, it's gonna
So you know why? Because now people have been so trained to be dependent on one source. That's like growing up in a home. How many people in here has been maybe the only child? Nobody, right? Oh, you? Only child? Okay, only child. So you're probably the only one that can rely. Imagine if you're the only child and your parents love you so much that they're always giving to you all the time. You go to them for every problem you have, every financial problem, emotional problem, relationship problem. You only go to your parents, and let's say one day they just die. Let's say they get into a car accident and they die. How do you think that child is going to be able to survive in their environment?
The world gonna flip upside down.
So most of them will maybe split their wrists, they'll go into depression, they won't know how to survive because they have what's called nest syndrome. Nesting is a psychological condition where you're so dependent on the parent there, because in the wild, the animals are much smarter. If the bird don't fly out, this nest is getting flapped off. You're gonna have to find some way to survive. You understand what I'm saying? But the problem is that now we become nesting so much on a society, we don't even fathom that these things are gonna happen to our modern conveniences and we have to thrive off the grid. The reason why I say this is because the oppressor had to find some way to make melanated people so dependent on them. So over hundreds and hundreds of years of taking away your identity, taking away your resource, taking everything from you, giving you back something that's counterfeit now, right? Counterfeit now, over hundreds and hundreds of years. Now they're the ones supplying. They're the ones giving you everything and you're consuming while they produce it, right?
You're gonna be enslaved.
There you go, that's what I'm about to say. So now the problem is that when you don't look back through the recesses of history to see how you got in that position and how your people were able to thrive independent of all the modern, now I'm not saying nothing wrong with modern conveniences. I'm just saying that we should be in a state of mind where we can survive, God forbid, that things get taken from us.
So we have to create a system amongst ourselves.
And the reason why I say is because now a lot of our unity meetings should be based on how can we thrive if things get taken from us.
Right.
We don't have these conversations. Why is that? Is it because we think that we're going to continually have all the resources? You could just look at world events and see things happening. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
When the World Trade Center hit, I was in New York, everybody just went crazy. And they still had their conveniences. It was just a cataclysm that occurred at that time. And people just went mad. They went insane. It's like, oh my God, terrorism, what are we gonna do, blah, blah. But you see, anybody seen that show, Doomsday Preppers? Anybody seen that show? That show? I love that show, man. These people is real, right? The Doomsday Preppers was like, yo, this is cool. This is the environment I was looking for, yo. You know why? Because now they learn how to be self-sufficient. Now they're gonna be the producers. Because when everybody's in disarray, they're gonna be providing the resources. Where's our resources? We need to start creating these for ourselves. And I'm end up with this. I'm gonna let my colleague back there do his presentation because he's here. But I'm end up with this. 2 videos I want you guys to look up just to bring back what I'm talking about. One video is by an individual called Daniel Everett. I don't know if anybody heard of that individual before. Daniel Everett was, he's an anthropologist, linguist now, but he used to be a missionary. And he was dispatched into remote areas where indigenous people never interfaced with outside world. When he came into these environments, he was being told by the Roman Catholic Church, when he was being sent to be a missionary, we have to find a way to get these people to buy into our system, pretty much. We're marketing to them as religion. They don't know that, but you have to market to them religion. You know what he said the number one thing is you have to convince those people of in order for you to be a successful evangelist in the Roman Catholic Church? The number one thing, and the reason why I'm saying is,
That the God looks like them?
that's not the number one thing. That's up there with it. You know what the number one thing is? Somebody else take a guess. Just take a guess.
That they need something.
What you
They're
say?
lacking something.
Say it again.
That they need something.
There you go. You right there. You're hot. Anybody else before I
Maybe they
go?
can provide them food or something like that.
Okay. Capitalism.
Capitalism.
He said that your religion
Right.
for evangelizing people is not going to work until you can show them that you have something that they do not have.
Right.
Now, mind you, if you look up David Everett, he went into deal with the Everett tribe in the Amazon, and these people, they keep themselves away from outside society, right? But missionaries always coming in there trying to convert them because they have resources on that land, and the only way you can get those resources is if I convert you to my religion.
Right.
Now, the reason why this story is important is because he tried for years to convert these people, and this is what his premise is, and this goes back to what I'm talking about. These indigenous people that was there. He said he never seen depression in his community. He said that while he was interfacing with the people, everybody always had. He said that there was an older man who was sick. He couldn't get around, couldn't hunt, anything like this, and the people kept giving him food. And he was to ask the person, well, this man is not contributing to society. Why do you keep giving to him? And they said to him, they said, because when I was young and couldn't feed myself, he fed me.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Now look, we're gonna keep getting into that. He said that they only hunted what they needed for the day. They did not worry about tomorrow. He would ask them questions on abstract things. Well, who do you think created everything? Who do you think this? And they was like, well, you was here at a time when none of this stuff was here? Think about what I just said. See, he's coming and telling them, so who do you think created everything? Who do you think put this? And he was like, you was here at a time, because they were empiricists. Right? They dealt with their immediate environment and they survived based on the land.
Right.
This is how indigenous people were thriving. Now they believed in a supernatural force, but they wasn't so fixated on it that they lost their fellow brothers and sisters and they came out of touch with the land. Now I'm gonna wrap up and I'm gonna let you touch on it. The reason why I say this is because
we got all the keys.
right? The reason why I'm saying this is because when you look at the abstract European thought and the melanated indigenous thought, and again, I'm not knocking white people. I'm not saying go out there and sort of what that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying to study history. When you see these interactions on how these people came into the land, and now walking out, they have the land and the people as their servants, you understand how this took place. Now, missionaries from the Catholic Church were one method. Another method was other things, but the objective was how can we get these people to see that there's something that they were lacking for hundreds of years that they didn't have, and now we give. This is what religion does to you.
Right.
Religion tells you that now I got to give you something that you never had before, and you got to come to me to get it. You don't have it by birthright. You need rites of passage in order to get it. This is what it does. Not just religion, any other form. Politics is the same thing. You don't know how to govern yourself, so you need me to govern you.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
You got to come to me for everything. So what they're doing is they're trying to find a way to take the resources from you to make you into a consumer, because at one point in time you was a producer. And now the thing was that this guy was a Roman Catholic missionary. Did you know that after interfacing with those people, he became an atheist?
Wow.
Now you know why I say that? It's because he went back and told the church, there's nothing I can offer these people. They're happy. When he spoke to another one of the brothers that was there, he kept trying to sell him this Jesus concept. And I'm not getting it against Christianity. I'm just saying, he was selling this Jesus concept, and he was like, well, why do we need that? You know, and listen to what I'm saying. They were like, why do we need that? If you look at each one of these religions that I just mentioned earlier, these were indigenous nationalities that the people had in their customs that they had.
Right.
Once they were invaded, the substance was taken out and something else was given back to
Right.
that we have today. That's why we don't do enough research to see this. So the reason why I'm saying this is because when you look to see how they interface, you'll see how the oppressor interfaces with those that they want the items from. And after he became an atheist, he said, listen, when I was talking to the brothers, anytime there was a relationship issue, the people forgave each other. He said, you know why? There was no media to tell them that it was wrong, or tell them it was otherwise. That means that if I was to injure or harm you, I understood that if I did not pay retribution, not retribution, if I did not give reparations to you for my injury, I know that I would not be able to eat on the land. I would be an outcast. And I know that I need to be in a society to thrive because I didn't know there was an outside world. So they was living in a self-contained ecosystem where there was no worries, no concerns, nobody was fighting, nobody was envying anybody because there was no capitalism there tied with religion. The people didn't need it. They respected nature because they understood that something created it, but they wasn't so fixed in it that they forgot each other. So I'm gonna leave you guys with that. Also, you can type in Europeans, not Europeans, I'm gonna send you guys a link. I have it here, I want to play it. But you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, where these individuals are coming into the Amazon and the Congo for the first time. And these indigenous people that has never seen a white person before, never seen them before. And watch how they respond to them. And then listen to the conversation with somebody who's a translator, who's trying to do their job to translate, and see how the words that they use, the body they use to interact with these people, and why they're so wary of them. Because remember, they was in a self-contained ecosystem. We were thriving for hundreds of years without any outside interference. So imagine being in a situation like that, and then those 3 crimes that I told you get committed to you. Home invasion gets committed to you. What's the second one? Identity theft. And what's the third one? Counterfeit. So these people was living fine, and then hundreds of years passed, and now you see it's a totally different story. They have the land's been taken by somebody else, they're becoming consumers now, capitalists now, it's a totally different mind state. So we have to get back to being harmonious with the land, with each other, and when we can do so, now we can have leverage to deal with each other on a different level, because now we're dealing with the common denominator and not the numerator that divides us. So I'm done with that. I thank you everyone for taking time to listen to me. I was killing time for you to come, kept picking you up, because I didn't want to do a PowerPoint, because I want you to come on. But I just hope somebody's taking that away with you, because if we have more talks about this in regards to unity, then we will stop being divided and we will work together. Because just like you have, like you mentioned earlier, the United Nations, they have different factions, but they'll come together on certain world issues. How come we can't do the same thing within our community, regardless of what our ideology is?
When you say that, let's get into that. Where the U.S. is certain countries that bully the
yeah.
So it's like, you know.
Well, I was just giving that as a loose example.
But when you get into that, it's even more.
But see, when we get back to the indigenous way, and we have that mentality when entering, for example, you'll see the UN Declaration of Rights for Indigenous Peoples. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. Look into that, because now reparations will be given to the people who were impacted by colonials and imperials. This is the way of them saying, you know what, we messed up, but we'll give you a way out if you know how to get that way out. They're not going to tell you how to do it, but they come on a record and say, you know what, our bad, you know, we kind of messed up. We messed up.
In law, what you just summed up, one word in law is agency. And as a more, I try to teach people that your issue socially is because we're giving agency to the wrong entities to do these services for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Instead
it's
of
like,
us doing it, so like I said, we have to be more producers and less consumers.
Yes.
The black person in America consumes more of things that are frivolous than any other ethnicity.
like we don't even birth our own children.
That's what I'm saying. We buy things that don't mean nothing 5 years from now. And I'm gonna say this real quick, and I'm gonna go, because sometimes I can talk a lot. But this is what I taught. Like, a friend of mine has 2 kids, right? And I was saying to myself, okay, all this deep stuff we talking about in the conscious community, how can I give it to these 2 kids, right? And this has to go with what I was saying earlier. So this girl, she kept saying, my mommy, I want Barbie dolls and this, and that. And the boy's like, yeah, I want Tonka trucks and this, and that, right? So I said, you know what, that's interesting, because what I see is that every year, they're getting a new Tonka truck, a new Barbie doll. They get something new every year. I said, okay, let's see how we can switch things up. So what I did was, one day, instead of me buying the same items for the boy, what I got him an ant farm. And I gave him the ant farm. And he looked at it, at first he was like, okay, have no wheels or nothing on it. But he was looking at it and it was fascinating to him. He's seen the ants, see how they work and how they operate, stuff like that. He's like, wow, this is interesting. The second thing, the girl, I gave her enclosed, do-it-yourself agricultural small little garden that you could do. It's like a greenhouse, small greenhouse that you can buy from the storefront. So I bought that for her, right? And I showed her how everything was working, right? Like how to plant the seed and everything like that. Now I gave them these two items. Now they were, at that time, the boy, I think he was 6 and the girl was 7. Now, did you know this was like 4 years ago? About 4 years ago. Did you know today they have the same exact toys? And not just that, Now their careers is based on what I gave them at that time. So now the girl wants to start gardens. And now the boy, he wants to deal with insects and animals in the environment. Why is this important? Because now I'm teaching them how to be a producer and not a consumer. Because now, as a consumer, you're always going to want something new, but it's not going to give you no substance inside. But now, the moment that you get a toy, like I told a parent, I said, if you give them a toy that they can use the next year, and year after year, then you made a great decision. But if you give them something they're not going to use the next year, then what good is it?
And those toys had life in them.
There you go. Substance, because now I'm teaching them how to be in one with the environment. So, thank you guys for listening to me. So, I'm going to let the next